guys, Lori here. I haven't done this feature in a while because I fell so hard into my show and I just got a lot distracted. But I did start a series at the start of this year about the new authors that I've experienced and my thoughts and if I would purchase, read, or buy their books in the future. So I wanted to go back and do the authors that I read in March and April for you guys, the new authors that I read, and just give you guys my brief thoughts and what I thought about their writing and if any became a must-buy author for me. So yeah, let's get into it. This is an author that I actually did wind up reading in February, but it was like after I filmed the video. So it's the Light Between Worlds author, Allura Chau. I actually really like this book. This book was like a nice mix between historical fiction and magic. It had Narnia vibes. It was about these three kids that wind up getting sucked into like a fantasy world, and then it's dealing with like the after effects when they came back. And I really loved it. I thought her writing style was really interesting. I thought her world building was really interesting. I loved how she mixed like magic with historical fiction. I was really impressed. So I definitely am going to read more by her book author in the future. I would either consider it a buy or a borrow, depending, or like from the library. But I was lucky enough to get this book at BookCon this year. It's called Treason of Thorns. So I did go out of my way to get this book above other books, which is actually says a lot because there was a lot of books in that section. But yeah, I wound up really enjoying her read, and I'm definitely going to be checking out Treason of Thorns soon, hopefully. The next new author that I wound up reading in March and April was Krystal Smith, and she wrote Bloodleaf. Book that I got from New York City Comic Con. I actually really like this book as well. This was like a very interesting Goose Girl retelling. I thought the magic system was really interesting and really compelling. I liked it so much that I wound up giving it to one of my students who hopefully she liked it. There was a very, very interesting romance that I think she'll like. Definitely I'm going to check out book 2. It depends on just how I get it. It might be a library pick or it might be an ARC if they wind up having any of the conventions I'm going to this year. But yeah, this book really impressed me. I really loved her world building, and I loved how the romance was, and how she took like this random retelling and made it into this novel. I was really impressed, and I'll definitely be reading more by this author in the future, and I'm definitely going to be checking out book 2 in this series. The next author that I wound up reading was Jenna Read, who wrote Night Music. Now, I really like this book. I think for this author, I would probably focus on getting her backlist from like the library or renting them or something. And her new books, it would just depend on the concept. The reason I got this arc and I was really excited for this arc was because I thought my students might like it. Because I have a lot of theater kids that are like involved in music and stuff. So I got it specifically for them, and I actually got the book signed to her. But for me, I think I would probably either get her books from the library or I might just get them on my Kindle or something. Unless there's a book that I really feel like I'd want her to sign personally, or a book that I really connected to. That's kind of how it is with contemporary authors and me. Like, I have very few contemporary authors that I keep their books, like Morgan Matson is one. But I did really like her storytelling, and I would definitely read more by this author in the future. I would just probably get the books out of the library or try to get ARCs in some way if I go to the conventions and they happen to be present. The next new author that I wound up reading was Gloria Chau, who wrote American Panda. An author that I like her books a lot because it definitely like lets me see like open-eyed like what it is to be a part of like a Taiwanese family or a Japanese family or a Chinese family. Like that type of read I really like because especially since I work with so many different students that have so many different backgrounds, any books that can give me even like a hint of what these kids' lives could be like is super interesting. The romance fell a little bit flat for me. I like the self-discovery. The book was not my favorite. I felt like I didn't connect to the main character as much as I wanted to. But again, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite book, but I did enjoy it, and I was more invested in the diversity that this book gave me, like the insights I thought that I had. So I definitely read more by this author in the future, but I would probably get it from the library just as a precaution, or just because I may not want to have my own book, but I would definitely like to read her stories and see what her take is. That's really important, and that's what this author opened my eyes to. The next new author that I wound up reading was James Reilly, who wrote the Revenge of Magic. This is a book that let me down just a little bit. I did get this book for free from New York City Comic Con, and I actually tried to read his Story Jumper series, and I wound up liking that from what I was listening to. I just never wound up finishing it because I had to go back to the library. This book, the world building let me down a little bit, and I think that that's kind of sometimes what happens with first books in a new series, especially in a middle grade series, because you have to really establish a lot, and sometimes it's kind of like gets like a little bit lost in the details. I wasn't like the world building just didn't capture my attention, but I was connected to the characters, and I'm definitely curious to see what happens next. So I'll probably wind up getting book 2 from the library or as an audiobook and trying to follow the story that way. But it was interesting enough for me to like want to know what happens next. And I am always very forgiving in first books in a series because I feel like the authors have to give you a lot of information. So I would definitely be curious to see what book 2 is like now that we have this foundation. So yeah, that's my thoughts on James Reilly as an author. The next author that I wound up reading was P.G. Bell, and he wrote The Train to Impossible Places. Actually totally unsure if this is a boy or a girl author, or a male or a female. I'm just unsure. But I didn't love this book. I think that I went in with like kind of higher expectations than what I should have had, and the book did not meet my expectations about what the book was going to be about. And also the world building just did not capture me. But it was an adventure and I was captivated to finish it. Just the world building let me down a little bit. And I know that book 2 is going to be a companion book. So what I'll probably wind up doing is I'll probably wind up picking up the book from the library or getting like an audiobook of it. But it was a compelling it was a compelling adventure that I wound up finishing. It just wasn't a book that like captured my attention. Like one that I was like, it wasn't like a Percy Jackson. Like that, those books immediately capture, the worlds are engaging. This book just wasn't what I was expecting, and I think that just lowered my enjoyment just a little bit. But it was still a fun adventure story, I'll say that. The next new author that I wound up reading was Crown of Feathers authors Nikki Paul Preta. Book that I got on one of my Allura boxes, and I actually wound up really liking it. I thought that this was a really interesting hero story that I really wound up enjoying. I loved the mythology that went with this. I loved all the various point of view characters. I thought that this book started off with a really, really big bang, and was unexpected. I'll definitely be hunting for arcs for book 2, or trying to get them some way. But if not, I'll definitely be reading the story, even if like I get it from the library. But I'm definitely going to be trying to get arcs of this book because the ending was really shocking, and I remember really liking it. And I just think her writing style was super compelling, and she didn't have some of the issues other first authors have with like complicated world building. I felt like her world building was really easy to understand, and I loved how she used historical documents to really like expand her world. I thought it was done in a very, very effective fashion. So I will definitely be checking out more books by her and possibly even buying them. The that I wound up reading, a new author to me, was Katie Cotugno, and I read Topten. This was one of the first arcs I got when I went back to BookCon like 2 years ago. And I never got around to reading it, but I did actually get around to reading it, and I liked it. I don't think I loved it. I like the concept of this novel a lot. It basically followed these two characters. They wind up, it's like the night before, it's like the night of their, they're graduating. It's the night before it's like the night of their graduation party. They wind up sleeping together, and that kind of causes like a lot of drama. So they wind up going back and like revisiting the top 10 moments of their friendship, seeing if they're going to be something more. I like the concept of this novel, but the execution was not my favorite. I think I said this in my wrap-up. I read a book like Better Off Friends by Elizabeth Eulberg that was kind of similar. I like that book a little bit better because the way it was executed just was stronger for me. But I did like her. Like, I did like the topics that she dealt with. I thought she handled the topics in like a very, very sex-positive way. But the execution was just off. So I would probably, I do have a couple of books for her on my shelf. I think I have How to Love, which is the one about teen pregnancy. So I do have a couple of them. I just haven't got around to reading them yet. But this is an author I would definitely read in the future. I'm just not sure I would buy all her books because this book's execution was not my favorite. What I'm going to talk about in this video is Tamara Island Stone, and I read Little Do We Know. I know she has other books out, but this is the one that I picked up kind of on a whim from Target at some point. But this book was very interesting. It was I would say it dealt with religious topics. And it was very, very hard hitting. It dealt with friendship, romance, self-discovery, all those topics. I thought it was handled very effectively, and it didn't beat the religion elements over your head. I don't normally read Christian fiction, but this definitely had elements of it. But I felt like there was enough in the book that like it didn't focus only on that, but that was like a big part because one of the girls comes from a religious family. Her dad like a preacher. She goes to like a religious high school. The other character's kind of different, but it was very compelling. It was a very emotional, hard hitting read. I don't think I would ever reread this book or like her books that are written in this vein because they're very like impactful. But I don't think I would need to reread them. But yeah, I was very captured by it, I'll say that. So I don't think I would like it depends on what the topics of her books are. I don't think I would need to reread them, but I would definitely get more of her backlist from the library when I'm interested in her titles. Because this one was very insightful and I was very captivated by it. So definitely read more by this author in the future. The last author I'm gonna talk about in this video is Tracy Debs, and she wrote The Phantom Wheel. This book I didn't love. I feel like the execution was just like a little bit off, and I had a hard time connecting to all the characters. There were a lot of characters in this novel, and I felt like her writing did not distinguish them enough, so I think I got a little bit confused in who we were dealing with. I would definitely, I don't even know if this book came out like 2 years ago and I just got around to reading it because I got it at BEA the first time that I went. But I haven't heard anything about a book two, so I would definitely, if she doesn't continue this series, which I don't even know if she would, I would definitely read the summary before I even consider reading it because this book was a little bit science heavy for me, but I would consider it if I knew what the topic was and if it seemed more interesting than this one was. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Phantom Wheel. So let me know in the comments what are some authors that are new to you. It doesn't have to be in these months, but just in general, what are some authors that are new to you and what are your thoughts about? And I'll see you next month for another wrap up of the authors that are new to me.